Hi everyone, Salt Goblin here. Here's a little video I wrote with a script. I hope you enjoy it. Keep in mind this is not my first language and I'm not good at having enthusiastic YouTube voices. I hope you can still find this interesting. Hello Gobos! I've been playing SWADE weekly for over a year now, and I decided I'd make a video on my thoughts and feelings about the game. I've tried to divide the video in proper chapters this time around to make my usual blabbering a bit more coherent. Disclaimer: the opinions shared on this video are mine and may differ from yours. And that's okay. I'm trying out a new point system in this video because I just had the idea while writing the script, and I've been meaning to try different things with my videos. So every time I find a plus or a pro with SWADE, I'll add a point on screen. And every time I find a minus or a con, I'll remove a point. Let me know in the comments if you find this system interesting at all. The final point of this intro is that I'll reference D&D 5th edition and Pathfinder 2nd edition a few times to make comparisons with Savage Worlds. I chose those two systems because that's the ones I've played with the most in the last few years. Different editions. For those of you who are checking in because you're not too familiar with the system and want to learn more about it, SWADE is the acronym for Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. Adventure is the latest Savage Worlds edition, which means that not all material available out there has been adapted to this latest edition, which can be confusing from time to time. So that's a minus. I mean, it's not as confusing as Pathfinder 2 and Pathfinder 2 Remastered, but hey, the previous edition was called Deluxe. You can usually tell which edition the material was designed for through the logo, usually found on the book and modules covers. However, if you somehow end up with material from different editions, fear not! From what I've read online, one could easily adapt different editions' materials to work together just because of how modular and streamlined the Savage Worlds system is. That's a plus. Which brings me to my next point. The system in general. Like I said, I've been playing SWADE regularly for about a year now, both as a player and a GM, and while this doesn't make me an expert, I feel like it gives me enough of a grasp on the system to talk about it here at surface level. This is meant to be like an introduction video for people who are just curious about Savage Worlds. I find the SWADE system, in terms of complexity, to be sitting nicely between D&D 5th edition and Pathfinder 2, and for me, that's a plus. I actually discovered SWADE after reading the first volume of The Expanse, the amazing sci-fi series of books, also a TV show. When I was done with the first volume, I wanted to run my own sci-fi game. I had already homebrewed Pathfinder 2 into a cyberpunk setting, but I wanted something more cinematic. Then I learned that The Expanse was apparently adapted from the writer's home TTRPG game. I then started doing research on tabletop RPG sci-fi systems, while simultaneously looking for a tabletop role-playing game that would open up roleplay and storytelling more, and simplify combat, because I was tired of sitting through hours of combat in my games. After a year of using the system, I find SWADE to be the perfect fit for that, which is another plus. An adaptable system. SWADE seems to excel at being adaptable and easy to customize or homebrew, and there is also already a ton of material available online for you to pick and choose from, which is a plus. But be forewarned that it feels like SWADE was made originally to accommodate non-fantasy settings. So if you're looking for something fantasy, there's options. There's a fantasy core companion, and I think I'll talk about it later, I'm not sure. I decided to buy into SWADE while looking for a sci-fi and superhero setting, finding mutants and masterminds a bit too complicated. Lo and behold, Savage Worlds has companion books for both sci-fi and superheroes, hence I guess the S on Savage Worlds. There's many of them. Some of the popular books or companions for SWADE Core are the Supers, Sci-Fi, and Horror companion books, and I'd be hung with short rope if I didn't mention Deadwood, a horror cowboy setting which I feel like was once showcased by Critical Role, but I couldn't find the videos on their channel during my 20-second search on YouTube just now. That setting, Deadwood, has a huge cult following. The D4 system. The simplicity of the SWADE rules... The D4 system. The simplicity of the SWADE rules rests on their D4 system. You don't use D20s in SWADE. Your abilities or skills start with D4s if you want, and go all the way up to D12s. You normally only need to roll a 4 to succeed at an action, and every time you go over that 4 by 4, you succeed more. We call that a raise, by the way, giving the GM more room to play with in terms of descriptives and storytelling, and that's a plus for me. For example, let's say we're in a cyberpunk setting and you're trying to hack a computer to find specific files. We're in a Shadowrun adjacent setting maybe. You roll a 4, which means you succeed in hacking a computer, accessing the system, but maybe you just succeeded in breaking through the first firewall. You haven't found the files you're looking for yet. If for some reason you got a 12 as a result, a bigger dice rolled, a skill bonus, the aid action could help you achieve that. It would mean you got 2 raises on your result. Maybe the GM explains that you hack in at record speed and are able to find the files you were looking for in a single action, rather than having to spend several turns looking for what you wanted. Raises are kind of like a critical hit, but can be used for storytelling. Maybe you found the homework folder right away. Homework. I mentioned that SWADE uses a D4 system. Only it doesn't really. When you level up, you can improve your attributes and skills. Rather than getting a +1 bonus here and there, the dice you use for that specific attribute or skill improves from a D4 to a D6 and so on, all the way to D12. And it can even go to D12 plus 1, D12 plus 2. There's no D20s in this game. Back to gameplay. When you roll your dice, you can achieve a raise with a high result, but your dice can also explode. Basically, when you roll the highest number on your dice, a 4 for a D4, a 6 for a D6, you get to re-roll that dice and add this new number to your total score. So, if you're rolling D4s, you are rolling lower than your other dice, but your dice are more likely to explode, I guess. In our game, the GM had to calculate at some point a huge explosion using several dice, lots of which themselves exploded, and we were playing on Roll20. And while this would have been super exciting to see in person, it would have been very annoying to count by hand. For that reason, I'm tempted to give SWADE a minus, but because it's just up to chance if dice explode, and it's not a common occurrence that he had to roll 10 dice, I won't give it a minus. It makes combat very swingy, however, which is a plus for me. I love when combat feels a bit chaotic, and the raises and dice explosions of the system really keep you on your toes, because keep in mind that the GM can also have luck, explode, and raise too. One lucky or unlucky roll can really change the momentum of the fight, turn the tide of battle. For example, in a third episode of my SWADE play on my channel, you can find the link in the description below. Small spoiler ahead, an enemy had its dice explode on their first attack on one of the players and almost killed the player in a single hit. Maybe you don't find that awesome, but it did create an immense sense of urgency in the battle. Combat feels lethal. It can be over at any moment. It's not going to take you 3-4 turns to feel hurt, for your character to feel very hurt. Last thing about the system I want to mention is that you also get to throw a wild dice along with your regular dice when you roll. It's a d6 that you roll on the side of your attribute or skill dice. So even if you're stuck with d4s or roll badly, there's always a small chance of success, and that's a plus. One of the players in my group really gets deflated when they don't roll well. I can't tell you how many times they felt so sad and out of it seeing the dice roll a 1 or a 2, you know, like bringing the mood down for themselves and sometimes for the table, only to notice that the wild dice had rolled high enough for success. And hey, that made it so that their character was useful again. I feel like it's all about keeping the action moving forward with SWADE. Failures often only prolong the task in a game. HP, short for hit points. You said earlier your player went down in 1 hit in the first attack of the fight. How much HP did the player have? You might say. Well, SWADE doesn't work with hit points. it works with wounds. Basically, player characters are called wildcards and start with 3 wounds. You take 3 hits, you go down. There's of course more to it, but it keeps things simple, which is a plus for me. I love the wounds system. The GM's main bad guy is usually a wild card as well, and its henchmen are called extras, who usually have only 1 wound. This is very reminiscent of D&D 4th and Mutants and Masterminds. I find that it gives more potential for the combat to be more cinematic. It reminds me of that Wolverine cover where he's hiking down dozens of Hellfire Club goons. It lets you throw loads of henchmen at your players. They still pack a punch, by the way, while reducing the amount of HP tracking for the GM and making your big, bad, evil guy a bigger threat. Berserker Barrage! Making unique characters. Another reason I was looking away from D&D or Pathfinder is that I wanted to try a classless system. As this is a game or system style I've been trying to design on my own end, and Savage Worlds at its core is just that, a classless system. I'm not going to give it a plus or a minus for this classless system, as a lot of people like classes and clear progression systems, I'm finding out. If I were to compare SWADE to D&D or PF, I'd say, picture you're making your character as if you were ordering a meal at a restaurant. A class system would offer you dishes already cooked, a burger, a salad. SWADE, on the other hand, would be more like going to Subway, where you can make your own sandwich, hero, by picking from a list of options that often have prerequisites, but are ultimately not constraining you. It's not just the rogue that could get a dodge bonus. Anyone can take that feat, provided you planned a bit ahead and meet the prerequisites. In this case, having an agility score of D8 or more. By the way, that restaurant versus Subway ordering, if I had more time and ambition, I'd probably make a little sketch out of this. But here we are. I'm doing this video with my unkempt beard in my bathrobe. So to give you an example of characters, my current character is especially good at parrying through his trademark bow staff and other edges, and provoking the enemy, enticing them to ignore squishier characters and to focus on him. He's not very strong or actually any good at fighting. He's mostly there just to distract the opponent while someone else moves in for the kill. Let me give you another example of what I mean by original character. Just for fun, I made a character with my father over dinner. My father does not play tabletop RPGs, but he loves sci-fi. He ended up making a blind spaceship pilot with telepathy powers. All this to say that SWADE lets you create very unique characters, provided you have a clear idea in mind or a good imagination, which is a plus for me. You can go with a classic knight class if you want, for example, but there's no box for you to put your idea in. The box being a class, there's no knight box. You are by default out of the box. Let me tell you a bit more about the character creation. Sure, you have your starting attributes and your skills, but then you also have to choose hindrances and edges. In terms of D&D, these would be like feats or class features, but both negative and positive, respectively. Hindrances offer things like One Eye, affecting negatively most of your ranged rolls, or Wanted, which makes you a hunted target. The hindrances are not only mechanical, they can also be role-playable and add to the story or setting. You also don't have to take hindrances, but in exchange for taking those hindrances, you can boost your character's attributes or take more edges. Edges, or feats if you want, are the opposite to hindrances. They flesh out your character further and give you a boost, a push in the direction of your concept. Edges are where you can become a wizard through the arcane background, or where you can customize your hero to your style of play. Maybe you pick the Killer Instinct edge, which lets you reroll tests you initiate. Real quick, what are tests? Oh, just things you can do where you roll versus your opponent. Things like grapple, intimidate. You want to play a character that does more than cast a spell or swing its fist during combat? Try tests. Maybe you prefer the calculating edge, which gives your character a bonus for actually going late in the initiative. I'm of course, simplifying the character creation process. I actually find it a bit too long. Due to its classless system, it's very open, and some people might find it too open. You define your character through a system of points, like points buy in D&D, but not only for attributes, for skills, hindrances, and edges. And even after making 24 characters just for fun, it usually takes me an hour or more to have a fleshed out character, which is a minus to me. Different settings. Here's where I think the system shines, the different settings it offers. Yup, that's a plus for me. You can perfectly play medieval, modern, or futuristic adventures with just the core rulebook. But there's so much material available. I've personally GM'd a few games of Supers, where I wish I could play more of that, and played through a full adventure module of Rifts for SWADE, which was insane, and the most fun I've ever had playing a TTRPG, which will give SWADE another plus. Of course, my group had a lot to do with how much fun we had, but SWADE let us do it. It encouraged us to go full out. It gave us the push and the GM the tools to just go completely wacko with the setting. I've also GM'd a few sessions of Pathfinder for SWADE. You can watch some of it on my channel. Again, just to give you a quick idea of how adaptable the system is. Over the holidays last year, I homebrewed Pathfinder for Savage Worlds in the Bloomborough from Magic the Gathering setting, and that was really fun. Not on my channel, that was just for friends. Something interesting going on is that other systems are being adapted to SWADE, Savage Worlds. Rifts is its own game at its core. Pathfinder, very popular right now, is its own game. But they're being adapted actually with proper modules and books to SWADE. They can be adapted to work with SWADE, and it works really well. Those two systems also offer more of a class-based character creation, if that's something you're looking for. Rifts being this post-apocalyptic, anything can happen, that it's just chaos. We love it. And Pathfinder gives you more of the classic fantasy classes system. The rest. I feel like I could talk more about the game, like its initiative system, which is actually done by drawing regular playing cards. I'd give that system a minus, actually. And its Benny system, which lets you reroll dice and encourage roleplay, I'd give that a plus. When I learned about the Benny's system, I was shocked, as I had already been using a similar homebrew system in my own games that I called cinematic points. Bennies basically are tokens, short for benefits for some reason, which mainly let you re-roll your dice. You start with 3 a game. Bennies have a huge potential for groups centered around community storytelling if you want. The rulebook specifically tells GMs to reward good roleplay with bennies. Those bennies are not only used for re-rolling dice though, they have a variety of use in combat, for example for changing your initiative or soaking up some damage. Back to the Shadowrun adjacent example I was using earlier. I've hacked the system! I'm looking for the files! There are so many damn folders on this computer. You will need several turns to sort through them all. Damn it, we're in a hurry. Can I use the Benny to find a folder that I'm looking for right away? Sure, how would you describe finding the folder instantly? I search for a folder called Homework. The book even suggests using bennies to influence the story. Use a Benny to find a clue. Use a Benny to have a chandelier in the room that you can swing around on. Some stuff like that. It's really cool. Keep in mind that sacrificing a Benny means that it's one less reroll the player might need later, or one less hit they can soak. When you have only 3 wounds, Bennies are very valuable. The book. Finally, how's the book? The book smells so good. Ooh. It's very good quality. The pages are thick. It's got this glossy finishing. The graphics, the art is pretty cool. It's got these thingies, markers. I'm using them right now, so I don't want to lose my page. Which help, which help you bookmark stuff. However, I find that looking for rules is not always simple in this book. So actually, you know what? I'll give it a plus. I was gonna originally in a script I was keeping it as a neutral because I find that some of the stuff is hard to find sometimes. But the book is really nice, so I'll give it a plus. These books are not always easy to find, unfortunately. My local stores don't usually carry them. Even the huge game store in my province called Imaginaire, which carries the more classic stuff like good old D&D, true cyberpunk RPGs and other things, only carried the core SWADE book last time I was there, and actually not even when I was there in person on their website. Well, to be fair, I did order the superheroes companion from their website, so they do carry it, but it didn't have a physical spot where I went. That might just be North America and our obsession with D&D and fantasy, however. I was in Spain earlier this year, and in a small town where I was staying at, I was able to find at a single local game store a book specifically for SWADE. I'll go get it. A book specifically for SWADE, written by a Spanish author. I bought it as a souvenir. And it takes place actually in a Spanish city. So there you go, everyone. Those were my surface level thoughts on the Savage Worlds system after a year of both GMing and playing it. If you're looking to play something else than fantasy, if you want a game that trims combat in favor of storytelling, and if you want a system that doesn't take itself too seriously, I highly recommend you give it a go. And yeah, I forgot, highly cinematic. This is made for storytelling. After all, their motto is FFF, Fast, Furious, and Fun. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoy this type of scripted videos. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you want more of that stuff, even if I just talk about TTRPGs like once a year. And all that good stuff you do for YouTube to help your favorite